Suguru Geto, along with Kenjaku, have some of the most interesting and powerful abilities in all of Jujutsu Kaisen. So, what if Deku had those powers? How would it affect and change the story? I hope you all do enjoy this what if. If you do, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. And without a further ado, let's begin with this what if. We see a silent blade come slashing down towards Kenjaku's body, dealing the final blow. The two souls that were once trapped within Geto's body are now free, but not for long. Izuku screams himself awake, deep breathing. His room is silent, however, it feels as though 1,000 thoughts, 1,000 memories had just suddenly filled his mind. He tries to remember anything from the dream, from the nightmare that he was just having. However, this causes him to get flashbacks to both Geto and Kenjaku's life. He places his small 4-year-old hand up to his head, placing it on his forehead, confused, wondering what was happening, as all of the memories of the two lives come crashing down into his brain, the memories flooding into him like a tsunami. However, he couldn't dwell on this nightmare anymore. He had an awesome day planned for tomorrow, as tomorrow was going to be the day he goes to the Cork Doctor, and that would cement himself as a future #1 hero. He was finally going to find out what his quirk was. Izuku laying his head back down onto his soft pillow, letting his mind drift off to sleep after a couple of twists and turns. He still had a lot to think about after discovering all of these nightmares just sort of flooding into his mind. However, eventually he does end up drifting off to sleep. Upon waking up, he jumps out of bed eagerly. Today was the day. Finally, he thinks to himself, jumping up, grabbing his favorite All Might action figure from his toy bin, swooshing it around in the air. It's time! It's finally time! The young, excited 4-year-old's voice rings out, echoing throughout the Midoriya household. He yells excitedly, racing towards his mother's door, banging on it. "Mom! Mom!" he says, banging on the door until she gets up, opening it, extremely tired. She looks towards Izuku before sighing with a smile. "Izuku, you know it's still too early. Go brush your teeth and then I'll prepare you some breakfast, alright?" she says, placing her soft hands onto his head and rubbing his hair. With Izuku going off to brush his teeth, she prepares a small breakfast for him before going to get ready. And once she walks over towards the front door of their home. Upon getting there, she yells, "Izuku, come on, it's time to go," she says, opening the door simultaneously. Izuku jumping down from his seat at the kitchen counter, grabbing his All Might figure in tow, swooshing it around once more. He couldn't wait. The two get down to the family minivan before Inko straps Izuku into the car seat, him continuing to play with his figure until the car would speed off, soon arriving at the doctor's office. Upon arriving, Inko would slide the minivan door open, unstrapping Izuku as the two would walk into the building. I have an appointment for Midoriya at 9 a.m. "Oh, yes, the doctor will be with you shortly. Please have a seat," the receptionist says before the Cork Doctor would walk in. He would smile, looking down towards his clipboard. "Izuku Midoriya," he would say with a smile. "Come on, Izuku. It's time, let's figure out what your quirk is," he would say with a smirk down towards the young boy, leading them into a small room in the back of the office. With that, the Cork Doctor would take a couple of tests, grabbing a little bit of blood as well as using his quirk. On top of that, finding out what Izuku's quirk could be. He tells Inko and Izuku that he'll be right back and has to further do some tests in the lab, and that they just have to sit tight. Izuku eagerly nodding his head up and down, swooshing it back and forth with a giant grin on his face, swinging his legs anxiously until the doctor would walk in. A click would follow, the door shutting, slamming behind them as an unnerving silence ran across the room. The doctor would look solemnly towards the young boy, a frown, a grimace almost, appearing right across his face. Unfortunately, Izuku, you were not born with a quirk. You are quirkless. What? The young boy says. His All Might figure drops to the floor as he doesn't know what to think, starting to dry heave. No, quirkless? The young 4-year-old, his entire hopes and dreams shattered right there in front of him. He cannot believe it. Looking back towards his mother, he asks her, I can still be a hero, right, Mom? Right? Finally, it's too much as tears stream down his face. He can't take it anymore. He's crying, full on sobbing towards his mother as she can do nothing but hug him. It's okay, Izuku, it's okay. The doctor flips through a couple more pages on his clipboard before saying to the family, I'm sorry. You guys are free to go now. He says, his voice calm and collected, walking out of the room. Inko picks up her 4-year-old son, putting him on her back before walking out of the office. Many onlookers in the waiting room looking towards the crying boy, figuring that he had just gotten what would be the worst news of his life. As they walk out in the parking lot, Inko straps Izuku into the car seat, telling him that he still has to go to school. He nods his head understandingly. Okay, he says, his voice stuttering through the tears. As they pull up to school, Inko sadly unclips him and brings him up to the office, telling them that he's back from his doctor's appointment and that if he could go back to class now. Of course, the office attendant takes him back to his class, to which, upon the door opening, his classmates look towards him, stars in their eyes. The day prior, Izuku had told them all that he was going to find out what his quirk was tomorrow. He was going to the quirk doctor's office, and they couldn't wait to find out what Izuku's quirk was. They all turned towards him. Bakugo had just unlocked his quirk with sparks flying from the palms of his hands, and now they were going to see another one. Today was awesome, many of them would think, turning towards Izuku, rushing up to him. They'd eagerly ask him, Izuku, what's your quirk? What's your quirk? They would say, however, his face still stained with tears, he would shake his head, beginning to cry once more. I'm quirkless, Izuku would say, as his classmates would wonder, what? You're quirkless? Bakugo, overhearing this, would walk up to him, laughing, something you wouldn't expect from a 4-year-old, someone so young. He would place a hand on Izuku's shoulder. It's okay, Deku. You know, since that's what you are, worthless, since you're just quirkless after all. We can't always be great like me, Bakugo says, everyone beginning to laugh. Not really sure what was going on. They're a hive mind, basically. They're only 4. They don't know what to think unless they're told that. And so, with Bakugo and everyone else laughing at Izuku, something snaps in him. Something sparks within Izuku. A memory of someone using something, a cursed spirit, summoning it. Izuku trying to mimic it with his eyes closed, outstretched towards it. He reaches in his mind towards it until it works. He summons 2 small, single-eyed curses. They mindlessly begin crawling towards Bakugo, grabbing hold of his legs so that he cannot move. Bakugo, completely shocked, wondering, what's going on? What is this? He says, unsure of what is grabbing his leg until it continues climbing up his body. The fear and terror taking hold of him as they finally see it. Because of Bakugo's fear, the terror within himself, it allows him to see Izuku's cursed spirits that he had just summoned. And so he sees these 2 weird things crawling all over him. He's yelling in shock, falling down towards the ground, a few tears straying from his eyes. Izuku, seeing all of this unfold, begins laughing. "I do have a quirk! I do! Izuku would yell before the rest of the class confusingly would turn back towards Izuku and then back towards Bakugo, seeing Bakugo on the floor yelling for Izuku to stop it as the two cursed spirits cling on to Bakugo's arms. Finally, Izuku would dissipate them, being, "Okay, fine, Bakugo. I mean, you asked for it after all. You said I was worthless. You said I was a Deku. You know I'm not. You know I'm going to become the #1 hero," he would say, as Bakugo would just shake his head, completely terrified, and Izuku would just continue laughing. "What the hell is your quirk, Deku?" Bakugo would spit one more time as the teacher would yell for them to watch their language, as Izuku would just shrug his shoulders, opting to keep it a secret. "I guess you'll never know, Bakugo," he would say, spitting the words towards him with malice. The thing that Bakugo had called him, Deku, it had caused Izuku entirely to shift his mentality, his attitude towards him. He wasn't worthless. He was going to become the #1 hero. So how dare someone like Bakugo call him that? With that, years would pass as Izuku continues to have dreams about the memories of Geto's and Kenjaku's life, and eventually he would begin writing these stories down, noting them, jotting them down within his notebook. He wants to understand what was fully going on. He knows that if he wants to fully be able to use these powers, he has to figure out the story, write it all down. And because of that, he ends up, this further causes Izuku to be able to use Geto's cursed spirit manipulation. And finally, the final day of middle school would come and go without a hitch. Izuku, having learned all of Geto's abilities, the cursed techniques, even Kenjaku's, as Kenjaku was able to utilize Geto's, and Izuku was able to learn from the both of their memories, and he became quite efficient using the cursed spirit manipulation. And so we see Izuku sit down, flicking his fingers on his desk, just bored out of his mind. Middle school was boring, and he had nothing better to do, and finally the last day had come. So with him sitting there, rolling his eyes, looking around, wondering what the teacher was going to ask, some probably stupid question since it is the last day after all, he would walk in, sitting down, smiling towards his class. "So class, since today is the final day before you all go off on your high school journeys, I thought, why don't we do something fun? I want all of you to tell me your future career plans, at least as of now, and where you want to become, and where you want to go to school, high school," he would say, looking around, asking students one by one, eventually landing on Katsuki Bakugo, who would stand on his desk, his fiery personality taking hold, shooting out small explosions from his palm. "I'm gonna go to UA and become a hero, the #1 hero," he would say, his voice echoing throughout the classroom. The teacher would then look towards Izuku, the student sitting right in front of Bakugo. "And you, Izuku?" "I'm gonna become a hero at UA too," he would say, confident and sure in his voice. The class all agreed with Bakugo, but were unsure with Izuku. Many of them from his preschool class vividly remembered that day, but they still haven't been able to see Izuku's quirk, wondering how is that going to become a hero? They don't even know what it is, and he sure as heck won't tell them. So with them unsure, they kind of give a few subtle nods, some people snickering or rolling their eyes, before the final bell would ring. With that, Izuku would stand up, gathering his notebook, putting it back into his bag as he would begin walking home. He would look around before smiling, seeing no one was there, summoning a sort of pinkish stingray for him to sit on the back of, jumping on its back and beginning to fly home. However, on his way home, he would see a small crowd of people forming under an overpass, many of them yelling, some women and children even crying, staring at a horrible scene. Deciding to go check it out, he flies down using the stingray and lands, looking for what was going on until he spots Bakugo. Bakugo being attacked by the sludge villain. He tries over and over again, pulling at the sludge, but it's no use, as the sludge continually goes down, deeper and deeper down his throat. Bakugo reaching around, scratching as hard as he can towards the sludge, but it's no use. It doesn't do anything. And Izuku, seeing this, understands that he can't just watch Bakugo die, so he summons 4 yellow, almost dog-like curses that begin sucking the sludge villain up, sucking the sludge right through their lips until there was no sludge left. Bakugo, wondering what the heck just happened, looking around, looking for what hero possibly could have saved him. The crowd doing the same, confused at where the sludge villain just went. But they couldn't see anyone. Izuku was blending in, standing in the crowd, and on top of that, they wouldn't be able to see his curses anyway. So with Izuku standing there, Bakugo, looking through the crowd, eventually sees Izuku's green hair walking through the crowd back to a safe spot to hop on his stingray. Bakugo, seeing this, would shake his head with a smirk. Deku, he would say out loud, sort of malice in his words. Once again, Izuku had used his powers right in front of him, but yet he still had no idea what it was. Izuku, finding a empty spot, would summon his stingray once more, hopping on it, and would begin flying off back to his home. As he would get back to his home, he would land where he would then see his mother, Inko, sitting at the kitchen table. She would look up to Izuku, asking him what his plans are for the future, considering that now he's out of middle school, to which he would just smile towards her. "Oh, I think I'm going to become a hero. You know me, Mom," he would say with a smirk on his face as she would just nod, a small tear forming out of her eye. "I'm so proud of you, Izuku. I can't believe everything you've been able to accomplish. It's a mother's dream," she would say to him before Izuku would walk up to his room. Of course, since Inko is Izuku's mother after all, he of course eventually would have told her about the dreams, about the cursed spirits he was able to manipulate, to control, and so she understood how Izuku was going to become a hero, and she knew he was going to do it. She knew her baby was going to be successful and be a hero, no matter what. And so 10 months would pass, not really anything happening. Remember, Izuku has all of Kenjaku's and Geto's memories, and so that also means he has memories of their practice and their use of the skill. So his only practice was really just using the cursed technique, the cursed spirit manipulation. He just wanted to use it more himself rather than relying on the past memories of those that he had. And so the 10 months would pass, Izuku practicing different scenarios with his many different cursed spirits in his arsenal at Dagoba Beach, where nobody really goes, allowing him to use as strong curses as he possibly could. So once it was time for the UA entrance exam, Izuku would jump out of bed, walking calmly out of his room before stepping down the stairs, Inko handing him a plate for breakfast, but Izuku would opt to pass. "It's okay, Mom. I'll eat it as a victory breakfast when I'm back here in a couple hours." "Just you wait," he says, a smirk all over his face as he walks out the door, jumping onto his pink stingray. Over the past couple of years, this has very much become one of his favorite cursed spirits to use, opting to fly on it whenever he had to go some distance. And so Izuku, riding on the back of the Stingray, he would finally make it to the gates of UA, walking in, smiling, looking, admiring the giant school building, his face giving off confidence, extreme confidence. Walking into a dark auditorium, he would take the written portion of the test, and he would pass it with ease. This is still Izuku Midori we're talking about. He is still extremely intelligent. Not only that, he also has all of the memories from Geto and Kenjaku, of course. So he has all of this years of knowledge, thousands of years in Kenjaku's terms. So with that going without a hitch, it was finally time for the hero portion. And Izuku was ready. He'd walk into the dark corridor, smiling, looking on towards everybody else, his competition for the entrance exam. And as he would smile, the doors would slowly sweep open. Instantly, Izuku would summon multiple giant red centipede-cursed spirits, commanding them to destroy every robot in sight, thus sparking a massacre. Robot after robot would be teared limb from limb into shreds by all of the centipedes. The teachers jumping from their seats, looking on, seeing something ravage this army of robots right at the front gates. But yet they couldn't see it. They had no idea who these points belonged to and what was going on. They'd look towards Nezu, asking him as his eyes fast-tracked everything, but even he had no idea. He would shrug his shoulders, wondering, what's going on? Who is doing this? He would think to himself out loud. As Izuku, the first one to walk through, everyone else stood there shell-shocked, confused, and wondering where all the robots had been destroyed, how they had been destroyed. As Izuku walks forward right through the rubble, he would bend down with a smirk on his face, picking up a small piece of metal, looking up towards his centipedes before sending them out across the city, telling them that they need to destroy as many robots as possible. Many of the students, seeing Izuku beginning to walk deeper into the city, would snap out of this haze, rushing forward, rushing throughout the city, knowing that they have to find other robots, or else they wouldn't be able to pass the test. And so we cut forward to see many of the students passing Izuku, some even asking if he had saw who had managed to destroy those robots so quickly. However, Izuku would just smirk to himself, shrugging his shoulders. I couldn't tell you. However, of course, there was one student who knew. Bakugo Katsuki. This same sort of attack that was invisible to the naked eye, of course it was Izuku. This mysterious power, and it was far powerful than Bakugo had ever seemed to imagine. So with that, Izuku would continue walking on throughout the city as the rest of the entrance exam would pass, points being extremely hard to come by as well due to Izuku and his cursed spirits. This would spark eventually the teachers to release the giant zero-pointer robot. It would slam its giant metal feet out throughout the city, crushing cars and almost some students in its wake, looking around, looking for anyone it could get its hands on. Izuku would look down, seeing rocks shake before looking up, seeing the giant zero-pointer towering over him, reaching its hand towards him. Izuku looking up with yet another powerful grin, summoning the rainbow dragon spirit, forcing it to ram its rough skin on its head right into the center of the zero-pointer robot, causing a giant hole to appear where the center of the head should have been. The teachers again stand up in shock, even some jumping from their seats. However, they still had no idea who had managed to do this to the robot. Again? How? Who is this? Who is doing this to these robots? Nezu, we have to find out. We can't just let this person not come to the school. However, Nezu would shrug his shoulders once more. There's nothing I can do. If we don't have a read on who it is, we can't really determine what or who this person happens to be. And so the entrance exam would come to a close. Izuku walking off, his hands behind his back, confident that he had just cemented himself as the best performance in UA entrance exam history. However, his confidence would end up being shattered just a short 2 weeks later when his UA letter arrived in the mail. Dear Izuku Midoriya, unfortunately, you have not been selected for admission into UA Hero School. This is ultimately due to your performance in the Hero exam, garnering 0 total points. Izuku would think to himself, jumping up, what? 0 points? He frowns, looking towards the paper, crumpling it up, throwing it into his trash can before walking out the door. Inko confusingly asks him, Izuku, where are you going? Before he just shakes his head. I'm going to take care of something. I'll be back, Mom. Opening the door, slamming it shut, leaving Inko confused, sitting at the kitchen table, wondering what was going on with her son. Izuku summons his stingray, flying off, looking around, finally finding the UA school building. Before it finally dawns on him, these people couldn't see his cursed spirits. That's why he had 0 points. That's why all his classmates never knew what his quirk was. They couldn't see it. This whole sudden light bulb was such a realization to Izuku. Oh my gosh. This makes so much sense, Izuku would say, landing on the roof before slamming open the roof access door open. While he was flying in, he had seen hundreds of students wearing their UA uniforms walking into the building. Today was a Monday and the first day of classes. Not only had they declined him, they also shipped his letter out late, so he couldn't do anything about it. Izuku, getting more and more angry thinking about this, would race through the hallways. However, he wouldn't be able to find Nezu's office in time. All of the students shuffling into their classes, leaving Izuku the only one in the hallways, sticking out like a sore thumb. Not only was he just there when every other person was in their class, he also wasn't in a UA uniform, making him stick out even more. This would of course cause Hound Dog, the head of security at UA, to sniff up Izuku's scent, wondering what that person was doing in the hallways. He walks finding them before seeing Izuku not even in a UA uniform, talking over the loudspeaker that they have someone that isn't meant to be on campus, telling his other security guards to rush to his location. However, Izuku would see this, seeing Hound Dog yelling at him, "Stop, kid! Stop where you are!" However, Izuku had no interest in dealing with him. He would summon a giant hookworm to take up the entire hallway, stopping Hound Dog in his tracks. Turning the corner, eventually Izuku would spot a small sign up on the ceiling. Principal Nezu's office, he would read, walking in, twisting the knob before opening the door. Nezu, after hearing this over the loudspeaker, was on guard, and seeing Izuku walk into the room would be even more confused, thinking this must be the person he was talking about. However, this boy, he recognized him. He was from the entrance exam. Wait, aren't you the boy that just walked around the entirety of the hero entrance exam? Nezu would say, looking towards him. Izuku confusingly would sit down. What? No! I'm the boy who destroyed all those robots. It just so happens that you can't really see my quirk, but that's not the problem here. Nezu would begin connecting the dots, putting the pieces together, looking towards Izuku. What? You're that kid? Really? We've been trying to figure out who that was for 2 weeks. We still couldn't figure it out. Izuku would shrug his shoulders. Yep, that's me. I finally remembered that you couldn't really see my quirk. Lapse in judgment, you could say. So, how are we gonna make this right from wrong, since you not being able to see my quirk isn't really the problem here? What is the problem is me not being in a hero class at this very moment, Izuku would say, slamming his finger, pounding it into Nezu's desk. Nezu would laugh for a moment, kind of nervously, would say, I'm sorry about that, but all the spots in our hero class are taken. Nezu, come on. You know what I can do. Even if you don't quite believe me, there has to be just a little bit of you wanting to believe it. I know you do. And besides, you know what potential I could have if I'm telling the truth. Okay. I'll slot you into Class 1A if a spot happens to open up. Izuku nods his head before Nezu hands him a uniform. Sighing, Nezu would begin speaking. I'm sure Aizawa, your teacher, will expel someone by day's end, so just come to class tomorrow, alright? Izuku would nod his head, turning his back to Nezu, walking out of the door. Walking to the door, he would open it up, flying off, using his stingray once more. The night would come and go as Izuku would wake up, getting dressed, putting his UA uniform on before walking to school, deciding that he wanted to embrace the scenery without just flying right over it using Stingray. As Izuku would walk in, he would marvel, looking around at the giant hallways that he had just roamed yesterday, finally finding Class 1A, where Aizawa would be waiting for him outside. Okay, Izuku, Nezu told me about you. I'll lead you in, alright? Izuku would nod his head happily before Aizawa would walk him into the building, or into the room. Walking in, sliding the door open. Settle down, class. As many of you do know, I expelled one of you yesterday, Mineta, and because of that, we had a spot opening for Izuku here. Say hi to your new classmate, Izuku Midoriya, everybody. The class would look towards Izuku, sort of looking at him like he was an outsider, that he didn't belong, not even knowing what his quirk was, if he was even powerful, if he belonged there. However, Izuku would not care. He would shake his head no. He doesn't really give a crap. He walks to Mineta's old seat, sitting down right in it before putting his feet up on his desk. This was baloney to him, and he was just going to prove everyone how much of a hero, or how much of a hero he was going to be within the next couple of weeks. With that, days, even weeks would go by, with Izuku finally molding himself into Class 1A. Despite only missing one day of class, that had caused him to lose so much in terms of sort of student relationships, I guess. However, that would soon come to an end when it was finally time for the first hero class of the year. All Might rushing through the door, yelling, "I'm running through the door like a normal person," his voice booming over Class 1A's voices as they'd all shut up instantly, turning their heads, looking towards All Might standing there, his hands on his hips, looking proudly towards his future class. He stares on towards them. "So, class, as your new hero teacher, I, All Might, the symbol of peace, wish to meet each and every one of you formally. I've seen your names before, but it still is glad to meet you. However, I'd like to meet you as heroes, not as students." Clicking a big red button on his belt, All Might would cause the walls to begin shifting, briefcases coming out of the wall, revealing each of their hero costumes. Izuku opening up his briefcase would reveal pretty much what Geto's outfit was throughout JJK, just sort of as an homage to the memories that he has with both Geto and Kenjaku. So with that, him and his class put their uniforms on before walking down to where the Heroes vs. Villains assignment will be held. All Might placing them into teams, he puts Izuku and Uraraka as heroes facing off against Bakugo and Mina. Izuku smirks to himself, thinking, oh, this is going to be fun. No one's going to be able to see my quirk, and yet I'm going to win. He thinks to himself arrogantly and overconfidently before All Might would tell both Bakugo and Mina that they are villains and that they have 5 minutes to hide the device at the top floor. They go up, hide the device before the 5 minutes is up, and All Might gives Izuku the go-ahead, the signal to walk into the building. Izuku, walking in, would look around, looking for where they could be, as Uraraka just smiles towards him. So, Izuku, she says subtly, what should our plan be? I'm not exactly sure, Izuku would say, responding. I do know is that you're not going to be able to see my quirk when I do activate it, so don't be alarmed if Bakugo all of a sudden just stops in his tracks, Izuku would say to her, before we cut back to Bakugo and Mina. Mina would try and get some sort of plan from Bakugo, however, Bakugo wouldn't really budge. Oh, shut up, I don't need your thoughts. I'll take down that worthless Deku with ease. Thinking he can join this class, just jump to my same level. That's not gonna work. He may have saved me once, but that doesn't mean he's stronger than me. What? What are you talking about? Mina would ask Bakugo, confused, however, he would just shrug her off. It doesn't matter right now. Don't worry about it, he would say to her, before looking around, wondering what to do, where Izuku was. As he looks around, peering from corner to corner, eventually he would spot Izuku. Seeing both Izuku and Uraraka walking down the hallway, he would smirk to himself. Heh, now's my chance, he would say out loud, using his explosions to send himself flailing towards Izuku. With a maniacal smirk, he would outstretch his hand, reaching towards Izuku, trying to send an explosion towards him. But it wouldn't work. Izuku, looking Bakugo right in his eyes, would smirk before a tall curse would appear. This curse, having a fungus base and several pinkish heads atop of it, would shoot out, grabbing Bakugo as the top head begins trying to kiss Bakugo. It begins reaching its lips outstretched. Just give me a little kiss. Give you a little kiss. The curse is trying to do, as Bakugo, terrified at what is going on, finally sees it. The terror once more coming out of him, allowing him to see this giant curse right in front of him, capturing him, trying to kiss him. He's like, What the hell is this? He says out loud as Uraraka just stares on. Well, you were right, I can't see whatever that is, and it looks like it has Bakugo terrified. Don't worry about it, Izuku says, as Bakugo continues fighting against it, but it's no use. The curse continues holding him in captivity. With that, Izuku and Uraraka continue walking down the hallway, looking from room to room, wondering what they could possibly do, where they were going to go. And so they finally make it to the top of the building. Izuku looking around before hearing Mina coming in, her flashy personality showing as she flies in, gliding on her acid before swooping up her hand, sending a wave of acid barreling towards both Izuku and Uraraka. Izuku summons the rainbow dragon to block the attack, its rough skin easily able to absorb the acid, the toughest skin among all of Izuku's curses, so that the acid wouldn't do anything. With Izuku having done that, blocking it, he would then cause the dragon to disappear. It had taken up the entire hallway, and they couldn't get past Mina if it was still there. With that being said, it acted too as a distraction. Izuku would jump in, no curses necessary, punching Mina across the face. Remember, both Kenjaku and Geto are masters at hand-to-hand combat. So this was easy for Izuku, jumping in and with Mina not really knowing what to do. She dodges a couple of Izuku's quick strikes, but ultimately falls to his blows, slamming a fist right into her stomach before slamming another one simultaneously across her face, sending her flying in to the supporting wall next to her, knocking her out clean unconscious. With that, Uraraka would just ask Izuku, so, wait, you have to tell me what your quirk is, because you just took out two of some very strong people in our class, and I didn't see a thing. Is it some sort of strength quirk? Some telekinesis, even? It's complicated, Uraraka. It doesn't matter right now. We don't have time. We have to find this device, alright? He would say to her, opting not to capture them, rather finding the device instead. The two of them finally coming on the last room in the building, touching the device as All Might would go over the loudspeaker, announcing that Izuku's team had won. Upon making it back to the observation room, all of Izuku's classmates would rush up to him. Many of them had put Bakugo up on his pedestal as a top 3 student in the class, and Izuku had pretty much mopped the floor with him without even lifting a finger. And so they raced to him, wondering, Izuku, what is your quirk? What is it? However, Izuku would shake his head, shrugging. Actually, I'm quirkless. At least, that's what the doctor told me. What? What do you mean you're quirkless? You clearly have a quirk. You're not quirkless. Well, I guess I have some strange abilities then, he would say, laughing, as his classmates would just kind of look towards Izuku like he's some sort of weirdo. What do you mean you're quirkless, but yet you have abilities? That makes no sense. That's a quirk, after all. And so, Izuku, having confused his classmates enough, they would take their battle, first the heroes versus villains, and it would come and go, eventually the day coming to an end. Even more weeks would begin passing before it was finally time for the USJ field trip. All of the students walking into class as Aizawa would tell them to put their hero costumes on and head down towards the front of the building where a bus was waiting for them. They would all get on with their hero costumes sitting down, with Izuku and Uraraka sitting down next to each other. Uraraka had taken a liking to Izuku ever since the Heroes vs. Villains, and she had made it a point to consistently talk to him. So with the two of them sitting next to each other, Uraraka would spark up a conversation. So, Izuku, who do you think's the strongest in our class? Oh, Uraraka, you know what my answer is going to be to that. He says to her as Uraraka kind of nervously laughs. I'm guessing you? Yeah. I know you don't know what my quirk is. I mean, maybe I'll tell you it someday, he says to her, winking as she blushes just a little bit. But for now, it doesn't really matter. All you have to know is that I can summon things that really normal people can't see. Eventually, this conversation would spread throughout the rest of the bus, them beginning to talk about who the strongest in all of Class 1A really truly was. This, of course, would end up reaching Bakugo and Todoroki, many of them saying that Bakugo was the strongest, or if not him, even Todoroki. However, they would counter this, some people countering it, even Uraraka jumping in. Oh, come on, guys, it's clearly Izuku. You saw how he was able to take out Bakugo with ease. Bakugo wasn't even able to land a finger on him, and Izuku just stood there. I mean, that's gotta be something, right? The students would nod their heads, some of them with Bakugo disagreeing. Oh, come on, you guys don't even know what Izuku's quirk is, so how can you say he's the strongest? Many of them agreeing with Bakugo, too. However, this conversation would be abruptly interrupted as the bus would arrive, the bus driver honking his horn, signaling the class to stand up as the doors would open. Aizawa would stand up, telling them all to exit orderly and to thank 13 for having them. They would all do so before 13 would open up her arms wide. "Welcome, Class 1A, to the unforeseen simulation joint," she would say, her arms outstretched before welcoming them, walking up the steps, pushing the doors open. The class would look around, admiring the giant USJ's building before they would get their admiration cut short. A purple warp gate portal would begin opening up beneath their feet, scattering the entirety of Class 1A across the building. For some unknown reason, Kurogiri, rather than creating the portal and sending out the wave after wave of villains first, he decided to scatter Class 1A first, putting all of the classmates, even 13 and Aizawa, in random locations around the building. And because of that, he would also then send the wave after wave of villains shortly following. This would mean that there's no one at the front to escape, no one there to go get All Might. And so we now would see Izuku falling down out of the sky, landing on a boat. He would look around, seeing Asui landing right next to him as he would help her up. "What do you think's going on?" Izuku would ask her before she would shrug her shoulders. "Well, it seems pretty obvious to me. This seems like some sort of villain attack." Yeah, you're right. It probably is a villain attack. I don't know why I didn't think of that first. I just thought, UA's security would have been better to prevent something like this, at least at this magnitude, from occurring. Yeah, oh well. However, their conversation would get cut short as villains would begin climbing over the top, over the railing of the boat that they were standing on. Asui and Izuku turning their focus, looking towards all of the villains as they would smile, bloodlust in the air, looking towards the two students. "Oh, this is gonna be fun," they would say, cracking their knuckles. "I can't wait to get my hands on you. Especially that pretty little girl with the green hair over there. I wonder if they're siblings," one of the maniacal villains would say. Izuku, hearing this, would grimace, his face turning stone cold. "These people disgust me," Izuku would say under his breath, summoning that giant man-eating hookworm that he had summoned when Hound Dog was on his tail. The hookworm, racing down, would instantly devour all of the villains that were climbing up over the yacht. All of them getting eaten alive, as Asui, watching this, was just shocked. What the hell was going on? She would think to herself before Izuku would place a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. I have this thing taken care of," Izuku would say, struggling to find the words. He would jump into the water, seeing no more villains were left in that area, swimming to the edge. As soon as Izuku jumped in, feeling the cold water rush across his body, he instantly was like, "Oh, this was a terrible idea." He thinks to himself, swimming to shore, coughing out some water he had managed to swallow. Why he didn't just summon his stingray is beyond me. So as Izuku reaches the mainland, he would see all of these villains looking, turning their head towards Izuku, as Shigaraki in the middle of them would smile. "Oh, what's this? Some dumb Class 1A freak trying to be a hero does something stupid. Who would have thought?" Shigaraki pointing his finger, the dry, outstretched finger towards Izuku, would yell, commanding his army to kill him. "Villains, kill that brat for me, will you?" he would say, as all of the villains would smirk, some pounding their fist into their open palm. "Oh, I can't wait," they would think to themselves, jumping, leaping towards Izuku Midoriya, trying to get a hold of him, trying to kill him end his life. However, Izuku wouldn't do this. Wouldn't allow it. He was going to use the most cursed spirits he had ever used in one go. Summoning hundreds of cursed spirits, creating an army of them. Hundreds of these no-named, low-level cursed spirits would appear, racing towards the giant army of villains that was in front of him, causing a full-scale brawl. However, the villains had no idea what was coming. Because they weren't cursed energy users, they couldn't see it, and because of that, they would just be shocked, getting punched in the gut, and some even devoured and killed by something that's invisible. It was terrifying. It was horrific. Shigaraki watching as his army would slowly dwindle, man after man, defeated, and he could do nothing to stop it. Izuku taking slow steps forward, smiling towards Shigaraki. "It's over, Shigaraki. Your time here is up," he would say to him. Shigaraki laughing. "Oh, please, you don't even know who I am. You'll be dead within the hour. Just you wait. Nomu!" He whistles towards him as the Nomu comes right to Shigaraki's side. Shigaraki pointing towards Izuku, outstretching his finger once more, just like he had done with the army. "You see that boy? That freak? Kill him. Don't be like these worthless buffoons dying in front of me. Kill him and bring me his head." The Nomu would screech in acceptance, running towards Izuku, sending its fist barreling towards Izuku's stomach, but yet Izuku would dodge it, the punch not even coming close to landing. He would smile, seeing the Nomu try and fail to kill him, before he would summon another cursed spirit. A large blue doll would come flying out of the sky, slamming right down, crashing into the Nomu, blood splattering all around where Izuku was standing. Shigaraki staring on, horrified, seeing Izuku had just killed the Nomu with ease, the large doll still there, but Shigaraki couldn't see it. It was just as if the Nomu had been crushed, squeezed, gone, like he was some sort of blood gusher. It was insane. It made no sense to him. And so, as Izuku would continue walking towards him, every step, Shigaraki would take a step back, horrified, terrified at what was going on. Smiling towards Shigaraki, he would tell him that it's over. There is no more need to fight. Shigaraki would shake his head. "Oh, please. Kurogiri, get me out of here," he would think to himself, but he would turn, seeing Bakugo and Kirishima holding on to Kurogiri's metal plates, making sure he couldn't disappear. "No, no, no!" Shigaraki's voice would echo out throughout the USJ. His entire plan, everything, was coming to a close, and he wasn't going to witness All Might's death. He couldn't deal with it. He would grip his head, gripping his hair, even decaying part of it. He couldn't do it anymore. "No, no," he would think, before Izuku would appear right in front of him, continuing to walk throughout Shigaraki's mental outburst. Appearing right in front of him, he would smirk. "It's over," he would think to him, grabbing Shigaraki by his neck, slamming him into the ground, before he would summon the hookworm, tossing Shigaraki right into the hookworm's mouth, as the classmates could do nothing but watch, seeing Izuku kill all these people, all of these villains, but yet they had no idea how. With that, Izuku would stand looking around at the piles of bodies that his cursed spirits had killed, had destroyed. With Aizawa and 13 and the rest of his classmates eventually meeting them all in the center, seeing what was a bloodbath almost. Aizawa would walk up to Izuku, asking him if this was him, and Izuku would nod his head. They left me no choice, Aizawa. I can't exactly hold my quirk back to not kill them. I understand, Izuku. I understand. This is gonna be so much paperwork, Aizawa would think to himself before they would get back in the bus and go back to UA, looking through all of his students, finding no injuries. They would get back on the bus, of course, the incident being reported to the police and UA higher-ups. With that, Izuku would be called into Nezu's office. He had killed countless villains, and in the My Hero Academia world, that is a giant no-no. And so as Izuku would walk in, Nezu would sigh, telling Izuku to have a seat. Izuku, look, I know you killed all of those people at the USJ, and I'm thankful you did. You saved the lives of your classmates and even your teacher. But you have to understand, this isn't a brutal world. We capture villains. We don't kill them. Izuku would nod his head. I understand, Nezu, but you can't see my ability, my powers. So the only thing telling you that I killed those people was my admission, but even then that can't hold up. Those people just happened to die. A stroke of good luck, Nezu. Izuku, come on, don't do this. I know it was you. You said it to Aizawa, and so what if I did? You can't prove that. Besides, you're not going to kick me out of UA. That wasn't going to happen, Izuku. Stop jumping to conclusions. Look, I'm just trying to tell you to take it easy, okay? You're free to go. Just slow down with all the blood and guts. Alright? No promises. Izuku would clap back before standing up, walking back out of the building, summoning his stingray, and going back to his house. With that, a month would pass as it is finally time for the UA Sports Festival. The students would walk in extremely excited. This was everything they were looking forward to. UA Sports Festival was one of the most highly anticipated events of the entire year. So walking in, Class 1A walking in, waving their hands, holding their heads up high as the crowd cheers, many of them with smirks on their face. They loved it. They loved all the attention, many of them not being able to get enough. As we see the rest of the classes walk in, Class 1B, 1C, all looking towards Class 1A, grimaces on their face, jealousy written all over it. They wished they were where Class 1A was, with all the limelight, the spotlights draped all over them, with all the public reach and outcry for them. They wanted to be where they are. However, they couldn't. They weren't Class 1A. Many of them, even in Class 1C, they didn't have quirks to be heroes, but that doesn't mean they were any less jealous. So, as Izuku and the rest of his class would stand there, eventually midnight would pop up on the screen. Good morning, classes of UA, and all of you spectators looking on. I wish all of you an amazing sports festival, and good luck to those competing. So, without any further ado, let's begin with the first event, the obstacle race, Midnight would say, her voice booming over the loudspeaker, as they would then shuffle all of the students right into a small, dark corridor, one verily similar to the one they were in during the UA entrance exam. With Izuku standing in it, he would look from his side to side, looking at all of the students around him before he would jump up, summoning his stingray sitting on top of it. It looked as though he was just sitting in the open, just levitating, hovering there, before the gates would begin opening and the stingray would fly out. Izuku laughing, feeling the breeze in his hair as his hair would flow backwards. He was having the time of his life. The divot, the minefield, all of the events, Izuku was easily able to fly over. But something would stop him. Seeing the giant 0 pointers standing right over him, Izuku would laugh. He would look towards them, wondering if now was his chance to use something that he has been looking forward to using in so long. He would hop down, landing to the ground before using his maximum Uzumaki, summoning a giant number of cursed spirits, creating them into a super condensed ball of cursed energy, shooting them right towards the 0 pointers. This ball would instantly absorb all of the 3 0 pointers there, causing a cataclysmic event, destroying them with ease as metal would begin raining down from the sky. However, this wouldn't matter to Izuku. He would walk right through the raining of metal, the storm of metal lurching down towards him. He would walk through it, collecting aura, none of the pieces hitting him as he would walk past the finish line, cementing himself as first place. With the first place tag, the 10 million point headband secured, Izuku walking back to the locker room would smirk, holding it in his hand. I can't wait to see who else passes, he would think to himself before watching the screen, seeing Bakugo pass along with Todoroki not short behind him. Then Uraraka, Momo, all of his classmates managing to cross the finish line. With the ending of the first event coming, Izuku and the rest of Class 1A, Class 1B, and the few from Class 1B or 1C that had managed to pass would be told to walk out back on to the field. Midnight would then begin to explain the next event, the cavalry battle. Izuku would smirk to himself, wondering if this was going to be like some sort of event where they had to get on top of each other. He would wonder how anyone would even come close to touching him, smirking, knowing he was going to be able to use another ability that he hadn't managed to use. And so this was exactly like what Izuku had thought it was. Midnight explaining how they had to get in groups of 4, and 3 people on the bottom would hold up their jockey, the person on top with the headbands. So with that, Izuku would gather his team, selecting Uraraka, Ida, and Mei Hatsume, the 10 million point headband scaring off many people besides some of Izuku's closest friends. And so, with that 10 million point headband on his head, Izuku would look around, seeing all of the other students peering towards him, looking at him, wanting that 10 million point headband, knowing that if they were going to get it, they had to fight for it. And so, as Midnight would announce that it was now go time, they could begin with the festival. All of the students looking towards him, the round beginning, would launch themselves towards Izuku. However, he would activate anti-gravity, one of Kenjaku's abilities, activating it but using reverse curse technique to create a sort of heavy gravity field around him, thus causing all of the people that would get within a sort of 6 to 9 meter radius of him to instantly be stuck to the ground. His team would be stuck standing in place, asking Izuku if this was him doing so. And of course he would say yes, and not to worry. They weren't going to be able to do anything. With the gravity holding them down for a good 6 to 9 seconds, Izuku would activate, summoning multiple red centipedes once more, causing them to spew out, crawling around, grabbing, using many of their little legs to grab hold of each team, causing mass disarray. Teams would fall apart, the jockeys falling to the ground as teams weren't able to stand anymore, their legs held by the centipedes. So, as the timer would begin counting down, Izuku had basically caused 0 headbands to be changed. He would hold down all of the other teams using his centipede cursed spirits, and because of that, all of the points would remain the same. So whoever you decided to join up with teams with, you better hope that they had as many points as possible. With that, Izuku's team in first place, Izuku would be called to be the first person to face off in the 1v1 tournament. Being the first seed, of course, he would face off against the last, Shinso. Izuku would smile towards him, looking towards the purple-haired boy, wondering what class he had been with before determining that he had to have been in Class 1C, considering that he's never seen him before. So with that, Izuku would step up onto the podium, looking towards Shinso, with Shinso frowning towards Izuku. The round would begin as Shinso would begin blurting out question after question towards him, Izuku yelling out his answers, and Shinso would try and fail to mind control Izuku. When he would go into Izuku's mind to control it, he would be flooded with sort of this evil, dark presence of Kenjaku, this evil, chaosy presence that it was so unbearable it caused Shinso to completely collapse to the floor, falling down to one knee, breathing heavily, looking towards Izuku. And because Shinso had managed to mind control him just for a split second, he was able to see Izuku's cursed spirit for a very split second, seeing the rainbow dragon come barreling towards him with so much terrorizing energy. Shinso would yell out in horror, wondering what was happening, what was about to happen to him. He would brace himself in just this horror, completely afraid at what was going on, what was transpiring, before Izuku would appear right in front of him. "It's over," he would say, kicking him right in the head, right as he would fall down to the ground, touching the grass. Izuku had realized that Shinso had managed to see his cursed spirit, and because of that, he used it as a sort of decoy to allow him to come in and give the crowd at least a little bit of a show. It wouldn't really make sense if Shinso had just flown out of the arena all by himself, you know. So with Shinso now eliminated, Izuku's next match would be up against Bakugo Katsuki. Bakugo, having not gotten any sort of headbands, he would have been a step below Todoroki, and their fight would have been the first one. And so Izuku facing off against Bakugo in the semi-final round. As this would be happening, Izuku would stare on towards Bakugo as Bakugo would smirk. "You ready, Deku? Oh, I can't wait for our rematch. And no more of those stupid phony tricks of yours. I'll be able to see through it and get around them. Oh, just you wait," he would say to him before the match would begin, racing towards Izuku, running, using his explosions to propel his body forward. He would lurch his arm outstretched towards Izuku, however, it wouldn't work, outstretching his arm, sending a giant explosion, but the rainbow dragon would block it, the tough skin acting as a shield for Izuku. With that, Izuku would jump back, looking towards Bakugo. Should I use it again? Should I use my fungus curse or not? You'd thinking out loud, wondering if Bakugo should be kissed by Izuku's curse again. However, he opted not to, summoning his stingray, grabbing hold of its tail, flying up right over Bakugo, before summoning the two small single-eyed curses Izuku had used on him so very long ago. The two curses would jump down, running towards Bakugo, grabbing his legs, as instantly chills would rush through Bakugo's spine, hairs on the back of his neck standing up. Is this what I think it is? He says out loud, as he can't believe it. The same feeling he had when he was 4, that feeling of terror, of helplessness, was now back. All of a sudden, he'd look down, seeing the two things that had traumatized him as a young boy. His terror taking hold, seeing them crawling up his body. He would yell, "Make it stop! Deku, stop it!" "Oh, I see you haven't learned, Bakugo." He would smirk to himself, summoning the pink fungus once more as it would capture Bakugo, squeezing him tightly as he would try and fail to escape again. "I thought you would have learned by now. I guess I'll just have to teach you a lesson." Izuku running in, punching, slamming his fist into the back of Bakugo, causing Bakugo to cough out blood. "Dang it, Deku," he would say, struggling against the curse, trying to break free, but it was no use. As Izuku doing this, he would once again summon one of his most comfortable curses, the Stingray, wanting it to finally get some glory, rather than it just being his transport, his mode of transport. He would send the Stingray flying towards Bakugo, dissipating the fungus, as the Stingray would slam its body right into Bakugo's back, sending him flying out of the arena. Izuku would laugh as Midnight would come over the loudspeaker, yelling that Izuku Midoriya was the semi-finals winner for this round, telling him that he was now going to face off against Ochako Uraraka in the final match. With that, Izuku and Uraraka would face off. Izuku smiling towards her, wondering how this was going to play out. He was completely shocked, not expecting Uraraka to go this deep in the round, make it to the finals nonetheless. And it was sort of a circumstantial type play. Because Todoroki was eliminated and because Bakugo was facing off against Izuku, she didn't have to face off against too many substantial people. The only real one was Ida, and because all she had to do was touch one of his engines, he was toast. And so the two of them would stand off towards each other, looking with each other, Izuku smirking. "So how's it gonna be, Uraraka?" he'd say, opening up his arms. "So what are we gonna do, huh? This little dance." Midnight yelling that the match was going to start in 5 seconds as the countdown would begin, the crowd counting down towards them before it would reach 0. They would rush, racing towards each other as Uraraka, running towards Izuku, would leap her hand out, outstretched, her fingertips trying to touch him, trying to use her gravity to cause him to float. However, it wouldn't work. Izuku dodging it over and over again before summoning a couple of small curses to race after her, to give her a little punch here and there. Izuku had a small crush on Uraraka, and it meant he didn't really want to hurt her like he was more comfortable doing with, say, Bakugo or Shinso. And so Izuku, protecting Uraraka in a way, would continually not use any of his stronger curses. Uraraka would see this, yelling towards him, "Come on, Izuku. I know you can do it. I know you can use your full might against me." Izuku would laugh to himself. "I wouldn't want to do..." His voice stops. Uraraka used it as a distraction, racing in, kissing Izuku right on the lips. Instantly, her face would go up in a blaze of crimson red, and so would Izuku's. He was shocked. This wasn't what he had expected to happen. And seeing this right in front of him, being kissed by Uraraka just because? Did she have a crush on him too? Minds and thoughts would begin racing through Izuku's brain. He can't believe it. What was going on? And using this as an opportunity, Uraraka would touch Izuku, hugging him as he would begin floating up into the air. Now weightless, Uraraka would grab his leg. Sure, Izuku could break free of it if he wanted to, but in a way he didn't. He was still sort of stuck in a haze, in a crush-filled haze. As Izuku was still sort of flustered, Uraraka would slam his weightless body down to the ground, causing him to lose. She had just won the UA entrance exam. Izuku smiling, looking up towards her, laughing. That's some stunt you pulled, he would say as she would reach down her hand towards him. The crowd cheering out. They had never expected to see something unfold like that before, and it was hilarious and amazing at the same time. With Uraraka pulling Izuku up, she would then hug him. That took a lot of guts, she would say under his breath, as Izuku would say, yeah, still sort of nervous and flustered. The podium would then be built by cement toss, where we would see Uraraka in first, Izuku in second, and Bakugo in third. Bakugo stepping off the podium, asking Izuku how the heck he managed to let Uraraka defeat him. But Izuku would just shrug his shoulders. I come to tell you, I don't know myself. I mean, you know the answer. He would begin laughing to himself once more before walking out of the Colosseum, Uraraka standing under a streetlight as the sun would begin setting, waiting for him. She would open up her arms, asking Izuku to join her for dinner, to which Izuku would be shocked. Are you asking me out on a date? Aren't I supposed to do that? Look, Izuku, it doesn't matter right now. I like you, and it's very clear you like me, so let's just move things forward, alright? Izuku and Uraraka, both blushing just a little bit more, would agree as the two of them would go off to get dinner. The next day, classes would roll the same as Aizawa would pass out a letter for each student, showing which internship all of them had gotten offers to. Izuku would scroll using his eyes, looking down, looking across all of the names that he could possibly internship with, none of them sticking out to him more than Aizawa, Izuku's teacher. He decided to choose him of all people to internship for. When Izuku had walked up to him and told him at the end of the day, even he was shocked. He just decided to give him an internship offer just because he thought it'd be fun, not that he thought Izuku would even accept it. And now that he had, he kind of smirked a little bit. It was going to be fun seeing Izuku out in public, using his power to defeat villains. However, one of the key things for why Aizawa even offered it to him in the first place was because he wanted to erase his quirk in a more controlled set or less controlled setting out in public. He hadn't really gotten the chance to erase it before because Izuku wasn't there for the quirk apprehension test. And so because of that, Aizawa really wanted to be able to see if he was even able to erase it. And so Izuku would end up walking into Aizawa's agency. It was very small. Aizawa, being such a lesser-known hero, fighting in the shadows, didn't really have some big, flashy agency like, say, Endeavor or All Might would have. And so, because of that, it was humble. Izuku would walk in, and Aizawa would get straight to the basics, teaching Izuku how to be a hero in the shadows. Fight without being seen. Knock people out without them even knowing where you are. Izuku would take in this information like a sponge, absorbing it, knowing that all of the memories from Kenjaku and Geto, those memories in the JJK universe, they don't really grow inside with My Hero Academia. This is more of a hero knockout first society rather than kill the cursed spirits type society. And so Izuku would learn and learn and learn. And one of the key foundational points of Izuku's training here was to use his quirk without killing people. That is what Aizawa wanted Izuku to figure out. Of course, it not being a quirk, but still. And so this training would eventually lead them into the Hosu incident. Nomu after Nomu scattering out of portals, looking for anything they can get their hands on, fighting hero after hero, even killing some civilians, if not any heroes. And so this would occur, causing Izuku and Aizawa to get separated. Izuku ending up searching the alleyways, looking for Aizawa in every dark corner he can. And eventually, he would find, stumbling across, Ida, sitting there bloodied and bruised right next to a dumpster. Ida would chokingly look his eyes up. Izuku, he would say, his shaky voice trying to warn him. It's not safe for you here. You have to go. You have to leave before it's too late. Izuku would look towards Ida, a confused glance. What are you talking about? Izuku would say. He's the hero killer. He's down the alleyway, Ida would say before passing out from exhaustion and blood loss. Izuku's gaze would stare upward, looking towards the hero killer. Seeing the hero killer turn his head, his eyes glowing, seeping red into the alleyway, bloodlust filling as Izuku sort of feels almost a little bit scared for the first time ever. This was eerie, this was ominous, and it was something Izuku hadn't experienced before. Staring on at the hero killer, Stain, turning around, would smile. Well, if it isn't another fake hero, he would say, sneering towards Izuku. Oh, I can't wait to kill you, and then kill your friend over there, he would say, his words laced with malice. Looking towards Izuku, he would jump towards him, his blades at the ready, slashing towards him, but Izuku would dodge. Every single slash Stain would send his way, Izuku would dodge each and every time. Eventually, we see Aizawa jumping rooftop to rooftop looking for Izuku. He would spot him, spotting him in an alleyway sitting next to Ida, the injured classmate and student of his. Looking down, he would see Izuku fighting the hero killer, but rather than doing the more common sense thing and going down to help, he wanted to know, he wanted answers, and he decided to stay up there, seeing what Izuku could really do, and would try to erase his quirk. As Izuku standing there, dodging all of Stain's blows, him with his blades even throwing daggers at him, trying to get any sort of cut on Izuku, it wouldn't work. Izuku easily able to dodge all of Stain's attacks, to the point that Stain finally had enough, figuring out that Izuku was toying with him. And so he would just lunge right at Izuku's body, trying to tackle him. However, before he could, Izuku would summon his fungus spirit again. This cursed spirit capturing Stain, trying to kiss him once again, holding him tightly as Izuku would just smile towards him, laughing. That was fun. Too bad you had to lose that easy, huh? Izuku would say, patting Stain on the back, as Aizawa would stare towards Izuku, confused how his quirk wasn't being erased. He was having his eyes glow. He was using his eraser quirk, but it wasn't working. This would, of course, finally cause Aizawa to have that dawned-on moment, realizing that Izuku's quirk isn't just that. It is not a quirk. and he couldn't do anything about it. He would smile to himself. I guess he's more powerful than I ever thought he would be. He would think to himself, jumping down, seeing Izuku tending to eat his injuries as the hero killer is subdued, captured, being held captive. Aizawa would look to Ida getting out a gauze wrap, wrapping Ida's injuries before calling the police and an ambulance to arrive. They would take the statements with Izuku having to say Aizawa stopped the hero killer due to him not even having his license yet, and that could cause him to get in extreme amounts of trouble. And so with Izuku there, we would now see the next couple of days pass. Ida in the hospital recovering while the rest of the students were preparing for the final exams of UA. Their first year final exams were coming, and they all had to study and prepare as much as they could for them. With that being said, Izuku would train a little bit before walking into the day. Today was the day Izuku was going to take and pass his hero final exams. Walking in, he would see his name on the board, reading that him and Bakugo were going to face off against All Might. Izuku would smirk to himself. This had to be done on purpose. They wanted to see truly how powerful Izuku was, and this was going to be his chance to show them just how powerful he really, really was. Smirking to himself, Izuku would crack his neck along with his knuckles. Looking towards Bakugo, he would ask if they should even bother with a plan, and of course Bakugo would just tisk to himself, "Just stay out of my way, Deku. I don't need your help, and you know it," he would say to him as Deku would just laugh. "Whoa, calm down, Bakugo. Yeah, sure, you can do whatever you want. It's not like you're gonna pass anyway." "What was that, Deku?" "Oh, nothing," Izuku would respond as the two would stand outside the gate, waiting for it to open. Meanwhile, inside the city, we see All Might walking around in his villainous costume, looking around, wondering where he should hide to try and surprise the two young protege. So, as the doors would begin opening, Izuku and Bakugo would race in, looking around, wondering where All Might could be hiding. They'd look from corner to corner, wondering what was going to happen next, as Izuku would finally spot a tuft of that famous golden hair. He'd smirk to himself before grabbing hold of his stingray, summoning it before flying off. Bakugo would yell, "What the hell, Deku? You're just gonna leave me here?" As Deku would look back to him, smiling. "Good luck, Bakugo," as All Might would appear from around the corner. "So it seems young Izuku decided to leave you here. Quite the strong tactic you two have going on, isn't it, Bakugo?" "Just whatever. Come on, All Might, come at me," he would say, his fists at the ready, clenched, holding out his hands. All Might would laugh, the weights holding him back from easily able to take down Bakugo. However, we also have to remember, All Might never fought the Nomu. He still is extremely, extremely powerful. And so, with that, Izuku staring on towards Bakugo and All Might from the top of a rooftop would smirk. Bakugo racing in, sending out an explosion right towards All Might. However, it wouldn't work. All Might would laugh towards the young Bakugo. "You're gonna need to do more than that, boy," he would say, slamming his fist right into Bakugo's gut, causing him to lose his breath. He would stumble back, taking a few steps, looking towards with shaky vision towards All Might. "No, I'm not losing to you," he would say, outstretching his arm, using his gauntlet, pulling off the pull tabs on both of them, sending an extremely powerful burst of explosions right towards All Might. And because of his weights, he wasn't able to dodge in time, using his arms right in front, forearms connected, to try and block as much of the blast as he could. Bakugo laughing as the smoke would appear. I knew it! I knew I wasn't gonna lose! I'm better than all— His voice would stop. All Might, now his weight singed off, would appear right behind Bakugo, holding his mouth shut. That's enough from you, young Bakugo, he would say, slamming the top of his fist right into the back of Bakugo's head. He would stumble to the floor with a thump as Bakugo would be unconscious. Izuku, having watched all this, would then smirk, jumping down, lurching towards All Might, as All Might would reach out his hand towards Izuku, trying to grab hold of him, but Izuku would dodge it, slamming a fist right into All Might's stomach at such velocity that he himself would lose some of his breath. He would stumble back, jumping back to give him and Izuku space, probably the worst thing he could have done, giving Izuku an opportunity to summon his red centipedes, summoning them as they would then race towards All Might, racing towards him, scattering before wrapping themselves around his leg, eating out at the back of his skin, trying to subdue him as All Might would yell in pain, blood dripping down his back. I have to admit, young Midoriya, you are quite powerful. A lot more powerful than I ever could have imagined. Too bad. It's all in vain, he would say, jumping towards Izuku. However, that large blue doll that he had used on the Nomu would appear, slamming down with a much slower velocity. Not enough to crush All Might to death, but enough to crush him under its weight, knocking him out as Izuku would wrap the tape around All Might's arm, signifying that Izuku and Bakugo had passed their final exam. Izuku would smile at this, laughing that the two of them had managed to beat All Might. Not really the two of them, more so just Izuku, but still, he had managed to defeat All Might, and that sure as heck was something to be proud of. With that, the rest of his classmates would come and go, taking their test before they would then walk home. UA deciding to give Class 1A and Class 1B another sort of training in between semesters, especially while they build dormitories on campus. This would cause Class 1A to have to gather for another field trip, this field trip rather being a week long, to the forest training camp. They would all get onto a bus before it would bustle off into the mountains right outside the city. Back on another bus together, and no schoolwork to worry about, this would spark yet another conversation about who was the strongest. Izuku and Uraraka sitting next to each other would just roll their eyes. By now, Izuku had told her the full sort of story behind his powers. He was quirkless, and his powers were cursed energy, especially cursed spirit manipulation. With that, Uraraka would just laugh towards Izuku, and the two of them would roll their eyes about them, wondering who the strongest was, and of course many of their classmates would end up saying Izuku, signifying and citing that if Izuku hadn't sort of been in some sort of confusion, in a haze during the sports festival, he surely would have managed to defeat Uraraka. Bakugo, of course, wouldn't really like hearing Izuku being titled the strongest of Class 1A, but he sort of had to deal with it, having losing to Izuku twice, 3 times in spirit, since Izuku had managed to defeat All Might while he himself couldn't. Eventually, the bus would come to a stop as the Wild Wild Kitty Cats hero group would end up appearing right in front of it. The students would all get off the bus wondering what was going on before they would then announce what was happening, telling them that it was time that they finally have to go and search for the forest training camp. Wait, what do you mean search? Some of the students would ask, wondering what the heck they had to do. Oh, we're not just going to drive you straight to the facility. No. Aizawa here wanted to give you a little bit more of practice, so we had to stop here, right in the middle of the forest. Dinner time is in 3 hours. Good luck. they would say, before climbing up the dirt wall, disappearing into the forest. The students would wonder how in the heck they were supposed to find the forest training camp. Meanwhile, Izuku would just summon his stingray, grabbing hold of Uraraka as the two lovebirds would fly off towards the training camp. Arriving within 5 minutes, the two would get down even faster than the wild kitty cats and Aizawa using the bus. And so, as they would be sitting out there waiting outside the building, the bus would come to a halt. Aizawa getting off with a smirk, with the kitty cat group shocked. Wait, what? How are you two here already? Don't worry about him. He has some strange quirk. It probably allowed him to fly here or something. Aren't you his teacher? Shouldn't you know what his quirk is? I don't pry about frivolous things, Aizawa would say, giving a little chuckle, as the kitty cats would shrug their shoulders. Alright, well, since you two are here, why don't we begin training your quirk even more, huh? Since I have a feeling your classmates won't be here for at least a few more hours. How about it? Are you two up for it? Without any sort of ability to say no, Uraraka and Izuku were both forced into saying yes to train their quirks as much as possible. Izuku's quirk still being a mystery, they really had no idea how to have Izuku train it effectively, sort of telling him just try to use as his most powerful moves over and over again. Eventually, this is where Izuku would learn how to use Black Flash and his cursed energy. Although Geto or Kenjaku had never managed to use this, say, in the manga or anime, Izuku still had cursed energy from the two of them, and with him being out in this forest, allowed him to experiment, allowed him to unlock these new abilities, allowing him to gain this Black Flash, perhaps maybe even allowing Izuku to gain a domain expansion of his own. With that, we see Izuku continuing to train as his classmates would slowly end up spilling in to the forest training camp building, eventually becoming dinner time with the heroes calling both Izuku and Uraraka back. The two of them, despite only training for a few hours, were already exhausted. They would smile as the rest of their classmates would look on in shock. Wait, you guys have been training this whole time? Yeah, Uraraka would say with a shaky, tired voice. They've made us practice over and over again out here. I'm kind of shocked how I'm still standing, she would say, as the rest of the class would nod their heads, eating dinner before going off to sleep. The week would come and go without a hitch up until the last night of the field trip. Shaking would occur as fire would burst out across the entire forest. Dabi was seen using his cremation quirk to spread out his fire across the entirety of the training camp area. Izuku, smelling this, would look up as he was practicing on a cliffside before he would end up hearing a yell. It sounded like Koda, he would think to himself, racing across the cliffside, finding Muscular standing right behind Koda. Koda scrambling backwards, pleading with the villain not to hurt him. However, he would just laugh. Why would I do such a thing to you? Just a poor little kid out here in a deep forest, all alone. What are you doing out here, kid, anyway? Where's your mommy, huh? Why aren't you with her? Muscular would say, reaching down towards Koda. However, Izuku would jump right in front of Muscular's hand. That's as far as you'll go, Izuku would say, as Muscular would just laugh at him. What do you suppose you're gonna do, pipsqueak? He would say, slamming his fist right into Izuku's stomach. However, it wouldn't do much. Izuku jumping back, holding his stomach, wincing in pain. However, the pain would soon subside. Grabbing Koda, he would rush over, giving them space between Muscular, as Izuku would then summon his aquatic stingray. placing Coda right on the top of his stingray, telling it that it needs to fly back to the main campus, causing it to go off that way. Izuku laughing to himself that now, since Coda's gone, he can do whatever he wants to Muscular, summoning those same 4 small dog-like curses that had sucked up the sludge villain, summoning them, causing them to run towards Muscular, so they would begin sucking the muscles right off of his body. He would scream in pain, the fibers ripping, tearing from his bones, from his limbs, as blood would pool down from his arms and legs. He would try to scratch off this crazy feeling, but he couldn't, yelling at Izuku to make it stop. However, he wouldn't. He knew Aizawa wanted him to try and stop killing all these villains. However, messing with kids, that is far too gone, far too past the line, and Izuku wasn't going to stand here and take it. He was going to make Muscular an example, causing Izuku to have his dogs suck up all of Muscular's muscle fibers and even parts of his skin before he would send out the blue doll. It would slam right into Muscular as a pool of blood would splash out from underneath it. Izuku would smile, Muscular no longer being around. Standing up, Izuku would continue to look around, seeing and smelling smoke and fire. He would get up past the tree line, looking around, seeing blue flames outstretched across the horizon. Shocked, he would race towards it, wondering if any of his classmates were hurt. Most importantly, Uraraka. He couldn't take it if she had managed to be hurt, or worse, even killed. And so, as Izuku gets there, he finds many of his classmates knocked out and weakened. Dabi and some of the other villains had ravaged parts of the forest. Eventually, Izuku would find a beaten Uraraka resting up against a tree, breathing heavily. He would reach down, leaning down onto one knee, holding her in his arms. Uraraka, who did this to you? Tell me, who did this to you? His voice straightening, now serious. However, Uraraka couldn't get the words out of her mouth. She would shakily pull her finger up. However, it wouldn't do anything. Her finger reaching up towards someone behind him. Izuku turning around at the last second to see blue flames, a wall, a tornado, barreling down towards him. Izuku had nothing more he could do besides try and dodge it. He dove out of the way behind a tree, but it was too late. His arms badly burned. He would look towards Dabi, yelling out in pain before using reverse curse technique on him, or on himself, reversing the burns, as Dabi would smile. Well, if it isn't another UA freak. Do you happen to know who this is, or where I can find him? Dabi would say, holding up a picture of his brother, Shoto Todoroki. However, Izuku would just shake his head, spitting at Dabi's face. Dabi, laughing, would slam his foot into the back of Izuku, slamming him down, holding him down towards the ground. However, Izuku would just smile, summoning his centipedes, causing them to crawl out of nowhere, slamming their body right into Dabi, sending him flying back into a tree. He'd smash his head on the back of this tree, knocking himself out. Izuku would get up, dusting himself off, smiling at this before racing over to Uraraka, asking her if she's okay, but she was knocked out as well. Seeing that there was nothing he could do, he walked back over to Dabi's body before he would have an idea. A memory of his, a very vague one, had shown him one of Kenjaku's most important abilities, allowing him to transfer his brain. Izuku would do just that, popping the top of his head right off before doing the same to Dabi, transferring Izuku's brain into his. With that Izuku now in Dabi's body, he would grab his own, holding it along the way, walking back, looking for where he could find the rest of the villains. There, he would end up spotting Kurogiri, someone who had somehow managed to get away at the USJ and had evaded Izuku's cursed spirits with a portal wide open. Mr. Compress standing there waiting for him. "Did you find what you were after, Dabi?" Izuku, knowing that he meant Todoroki, he would just shake his head. "No. What about you?" "Well, I happen to have the young Katsuki Bakugo here. Quite the villainous and fiery personality, you could say. Perhaps maybe he'll fancy joining us as villains. You never know, but he'll make a good hostage," Mr. Compress says before they would walk through the portal. Izuku holding Izuku's body, or should I say Izuku as Dabi, holding his own body, walking back into the room. He would tie Izuku up on a chair right next to Bakugo, as the former body of his own would sit there, almost lifeless, its eyelids closed, no brain inside at all. Izuku would look around, looking towards everyone in Dabi's body as they would ask him why he had captured him, saying that he believed he could use him as another sort of vessel, someone that they can get more out of if he had been captured. They would nod their heads, looking down towards the body of both Bakugo Katsuki and the former body of Izuku Midoriya. Cutting back to the heroes at the Force training camp, we see cops surrounding the place as Aizawa and the Wild Kitty Cats do head count, finding out that both Izuku and Bakugo had been captured. A badly beaten Uraraka puts her hand over her mouth and tears begin streaming down her face. "They got Izuku? No, they can't, they couldn't have," she would say, beginning to cry, fearing the worst for Izuku. She knows he can handle his own and that he is incredibly powerful, even defeating All Might. But somehow he had still been captured. It didn't make all too much sense to her. As Izuku sits at the bar playing with Dabi's fire, using it in his fingers, twirling it around, he smirks to himself, able to use a cork for the first time. He would sigh. This was a new feeling. Toga would ask him what is wrong, however, he would just shake his head. "You guys don't think the heroes are coming after us, do you?" They would shake their head no. "No, there's no way the heroes would come after us. I mean, come on. There's just no way, right?" Twice would say, completely second-guessing himself, wondering if maybe Izuku was right, the heroes were going to come after them. And lo and behold, he would be. The Kamino incident was going to occur. We cut back to UA, seeing all of the UA teachers in a panic. They're sitting down in front of a press conference. The press conference grilling them about what they were going to do. What had happened? 2 UA students had managed to get kidnapped by the League of Villains, a highly dangerous league, and they were just going to sit there and let it happen? No, they couldn't. But at the same time, they also had to assume that the League of Villains was watching, and they couldn't give away any details. We see All Might and Nezu sitting right in the middle before Nezu would speak. At this time, we are doing everything in our power to locate the whereabouts of both young Katsuki Bakugo and Izuku Midoriya. At this very moment, we don't have any leads. However, we expect to have some by the end of the week. Thank you. The press would begin grilling them with even more questions, but Nezu would tell his teachers to stand up. It's over. They know what has to be done. Cutting back to the League of Villains, we see Toga examining Izuku and Dabi's body, putting her finger up to Izuku's scar on the top of his forehead. Hey, Dabi, where did you happen to get this scar from? Oh, that's that dumb kid over there. He slashed me with something, I couldn't see it, right across my forehead. Just another scar, Izuku would say, motioning towards his burns all over his body, as Toga would just laugh. Yeah, oh well, she would say before Izuku would smile, knowing that this is working as well as it could be. We cut back to see the heroes sitting around a table, planning their next steps, planning what their moves could possibly be. Okay, so we know that Izuku and Bakugo have been kidnapped, and we know where a possible warehouse location could be. We also happen to have another lead at a second location, possibly the main location, as the Nomu from Momo's tracker here could be just a warehouse. I doubt they keep those mindless creatures all cooped up around all the regular people. Or, not regular, but villains, you know what I mean. All Might would say, pointing at a map, as the heroes would nod, understanding. Okay, so here's the deal. We're going to have two sets of teams here. Some of the top heroes in the entire country are going to go to this warehouse, being the Nomus. The second one, including me, are going to go here, where we presume Izuku and Bakugo are being held, and we are going to rescue them. There is no try. We have to. If we don't, we risk the fate of UA, and not only UA, the entirety of the hero society as we know it. The heroes would all nod their heads towards All Might before looking around. This was it. The final battle was gearing to a head. We cut forward a few hours, seeing Izuku sitting at the bar, tapping his fingers, wondering what was going down, learning as much information as he could. However, all of a sudden, Izuku's plan to infiltrate the League of Villains was cut short, as Mount Lady and Kamui Woods would bust right into the building. Mount Lady kicking a giant hole right through the side of it, as Kamui Woods would grab hold of both Izuku and Bakugo, as the lifeless Izuku body would flail in the wind, as Bakugo would begin yelling at the villains, laughing at them for thinking that they could take him out. Izuku, knowing he has to play along, shoots off a small burst of fire towards Woods, trying to make it seem not as obvious. However, he would end up coming back, placing both Bakugo and Izuku's body in a safe location before racing back to him, or racing back to the League of Villains, trying to subdue them. However, it wouldn't work. Izuku would place a wall of cremation fire around the League of Villains, telling them that they need to escape. All for One, appearing, using a gray, goopy portal, would yell for the League to disappear through it. However, Izuku wouldn't. He would duck behind the bar as All for One would appear, beginning to laugh, slowly clapping his hands. "Come out, All Might. I know you're here," he would say, cracking his fingers. "The reign of One for All is over." He would laugh to himself as All Might would finally appearing from around the corner. "It's over, All for One. You know this is the final battle, and you know I'm willing to fight to the death for it. So, how do you want this to go down? I assume you already have a plan for it." "Oh yes, All Might. I definitely have a plan already sketched out in my mind for this. Don't bother, though. It will be no use," he says, his voice flattening, sending out spiky tendrils right towards All Might. with nothing he could do. He tries to dodge it, but a tendril would begin slashing towards his arms. Jumping backwards, he would slam his fist into them, causing some of them to crack under the immense amount of pressure and strength from All Might's punch. He would yell out in pain, holding his arm as blood would begin gushing out of it from the cut from All For One's tendrils. He'd begin laughing, his eyes glowing a deep red through his helmet. Oh, All Might. I thought after the Nomu would have weakened you, but it seems you are just as strong. What's Nomu? Oh, right. You never had to face him. I guess you are far stronger than I could have imagined. I guess I may have to use 100% against you. Who would have imagined? He would say, jumping towards All Might, lurching towards his body. However, it wouldn't do anything. A rainbow dragon blocking All For One's attack. Sitting there confused, he would look out. What the hell? All For One would say before Izuku and Dabi's body would appear, smiling right across his face. Because Izuku had he was the reincarnation of both Kenjaku and Geto, Izuku was able to continually use those two abilities despite any body he was in. And using that rainbow dragon, he blocked All For One's attack before summoning fire around his fist, the hottest fire he could, singeing into his skin, but he slams this punch, this fire infused with cursed energy, right into All For One's back, sending a giant hole right through it. He coughs out blood from his mouth, completely shocked, falling down to his knees. It's over, All For One, he would say to him. All Might, confused, seeing what he thought was a villain, what he had heard from Uraraka, the story, how the last thing she remembers was seeing this villain kill Izuku, or at least capture him. And yet, he was now killing All For One. Could this be some sort of decoy, some sort of trick? All Might would lunge towards Izuku, however he would dodge it, capturing All Might in his fungus. It's okay, All Might. Truly, it's okay. Look, Izuku would say, reaching back towards Dabi's head, popping the top of his skull off. What the hell? He would say out loud, completely confused, the news helicopter zooming in on Izuku with the top of his head off, revealing a brain with a mouth. Truly, it's okay. It's me, Izuku. Who am I to believe? Izuku's right over there. Izuku would laugh, walking over to his body, picking him up, popping the cap of his head off, and changing bodies, swapping back, and the only reason he was able to was because his body was still in pristine condition, still able to host him. And so, with Izuku popping his head back, or his brain back in his original body, and would put his cap back on, he would smile towards All Might. That's just one of my many abilities, All Might. Truly, you gotta trust me on that. All Might and the rest of the UA teachers staring on, confused, seeing what had just transpired, were looking on in a mix of shock, horror, and gratitude. Izuku had managed to infiltrate the League of Villains and had killed the top enemy of the state, All For One. All Might would smile, standing up. Alright, Izuku, I trust you, he says before the two of them would walk back, rescuing Bakugo as well. With that, the rest of the League of Villains, without All For One, Nomus became pretty much useless. They had been largely defeated in this final battle as well. And so with no Nomus, no All For One, the League of Villains quickly subsided, especially without Dabi either. There was still Toga, Twice, Magni, and Spinner. However, those four really couldn't really plan anything. They weren't the smartest individuals either. and so the League of Villains would vanish. Slowly over time, the four of them would get picked off and sent to jail. While this was happening, Izuku's hero career would take off, sort of an invisible hero almost. People would see him appear and would then see the villains that he was fighting disappear. He was almost like a magician almost, and since they couldn't see his cursed spirits, they had no idea what his quirk was, allowing him to race all the way up to the second spot of the top 10 pro heroes, with the society, the council, not wanting to give him first place simply because they had no idea what his quirk was and that they can't control him. Izuku, of course, would continue to be useful, especially in the overhaul raid, with him and Mirio, two future top 3 heroes, racing in to find Eri. It was almost a no-brainer that they would win. Even though Mirio would get shot with a rewinding quirk bullet, or a quirk racing bullet, Izuku would still able to defeat Overhaul, using yet another maximum Uzumaki to completely eviscerate Overhaul right where he stood. One of Izuku's most powerful abilities that he thankfully would never really have to use. His cursed spirits were already overpowered enough in this universe. And not only that, with Izuku's hero career taking off, also his love life would as well. Him and his girlfriend, soon-to-be wife, Ochako Uraraka, would continue to pass through their relationship. Eventually, at the final day of hero classes and their graduation, Izuku would decide to propose, looking up to Uraraka, asking her if she would marry him, and of course, she would say yes, blushing with a few small tears streaming down her face, causing Izuku and Uraraka to become one of the most powerful crime-fighting duos in the entire world. Izuku's cursed spirits allowing him to pretty much take down anyone he ever wanted. However, with Uraraka or Uravity's anti-gravity quirk, it would make things just that much more easy for Izuku. And with that, what if Deku had Geto's powers, or what if Deku was Geto's reincarnation? What if Deku was Kenjaku's reincarnation? All those different titles. I haven't decided on one yet at the time of recording this, but that is where this what if comes to an end. I really hope you guys did enjoy. It's my first 2-hour-long video in quite some time, so yeah. I thank you all for watching. Please, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help this channel out. And also, if you do have any interest in commissioning a what if from me, make sure to go join the Discord down in the description below, and you can get more details there. And even if you don't want to commission anything, make sure to also join that Discord, as well as announcements happen all the time, and even sneak peeks at what future what ifs could be. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.